So here at the Home Depot, gotta do a gutter install. Let's see, what do we need? Well, we could go with, this is flashing. Looks like we could, oh, here we go. Vinyl gutter. Leaf guard. Here's the K-style gutters. These are gonna be the ones we go with. Maybe vinyl. This isn't gonna get sun-baked like the front of the house could, so otherwise we'd use this, which is steel. We're gonna need, let's see, we need left and right end caps. We need 30 foot of gutter. We need some downspout location stuff. We're gonna need a corner, or an elbow, I should say. A couple different styles of elbows. So we need one of those. We need one that goes from one to the other, which is right there. And we're gonna need a bracket to mount the gutter. Steel one. And final. Probably need a couple of those. And there's the steel. I think we should be good. Yeah. Oh, screws. Perfect. Oh, and hangers. Yay, okay, we're good.
So today we're going up, and we already have our plan put together. We already have all of our items purchased to make these gutters work. So we need to get started on this. Now it's going to take about, well, probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours to actually get the gutter installed. Then we'll give it a water test, and then we're going to seal up things up a little bit with some silicone caulking. And then we'll, wrap up the project. And eventually we'll install a rain barrel, which will be another project on another day. So let's get to work because we've got a lot to do. Okay, a couple of quick notes. First of all, you want to make sure you have pretty good support for each of your gutters. It's actually quite key. And these K-rail gutters, they kind of have these hidden brackets that we purchased in the big box store. They really only require one screw hole, and it just drives right into your house trim. And it holds up the gutter. You do want several of them per 10-foot section, at least 2 to 3. Number one, you don't want any bowing or twisting. And number two, you want to make sure that everything stays flat. All right, we need to talk really quickly about bracket spacing. Brackets need to be spaced appropriate to where you live. So in this particular case, you're going to be in a climate that has snow, heavy rainfall all the time, year-round, that kind of situation. You don't want these brackets spaced more than approximately 16 inches apart. Now, if you live in a drier climate, somewhere like the desert Southwest or Texas or a few places where you only get occasional rain, then you can space these much farther apart. In fact, you can space them up to 36 inches apart, according to the manufacturer. You also have, the opportunity to kind of move these around and slide the gutter along them, but you don't want to overdo it on the brackets because it's a waste of money, and you don't want to underdo it because you could end up having to go back and repair a shoddy job. So, again, spacing is appropriate. In my particular climate, they don't have to be this close together. They don't have to be that close together. They can be within, well, it could be 30 inches apart or so, and that's about where I'm going to settle at, about 30 to 36 inches apart. It's very important to go ahead and pre-fit your things before you go up about hanging it. A lot of times people will install their hangers and then they'll try to attach their gutter, and that doesn't really work very well. But you want to put your end cap in place so that it's seated firmly. You want to put your hanger in place, and you just kind of want to go down the entire run here and install all of your elements, so when you put it up, it's ready to go. All right, one of the other things that we have to deal with is connecting pieces to each other, and that's where unions come in. If you can see here, we got an outside U and an inside U. Believe it or not, you put the inside U in there first, about halfway through your connection. So this inside U slides in here, about halfway through, right there. Just like that. Same thing with the outside U. And you just kind of stretch this to fit. Believe it or not, that's the easy part, because the inside U will fit pretty easily on the other piece. It's this outside U that I'm holding right now that's going to slip over here and get pulled and stretched to connect these two pieces together when we get up on the ladder. So this is an adventure. Get ready. It's actually not as hard as you think. Just takes a little bit of finger strength, and then you snap this puppy in place. You're good to go. Okay, now we need to consider slope. Of course, water is going to find the lowest, the lowest point to drain to, which means you could, and you're not supposed to, but you could actually focus in on just leaving this level, running it, in line with whatever trim you have on your fascia or whatever. But that's not necessarily the best. What's probably the best is what the manufacturer recommends and what professional installers or contractors would do, which means for every 10 feet, you want to have a slope of about 1/4 inches. So since we're starting here as our high side, we're gonna slope it down 1/4 inches every 10 feet. Now, each one of these gutters is 10 feet long before you join them. So by the end of this particular run, I'll be down not quite 3/4 of an inch. So we also, again, need to make sure that we are coming in just a little past the flashing and the edge of our fascia and our trim here with our gutter. So we're gonna have to make some custom allowance along the way here. You also wanna install your gutter a little bit underneath your roof line, where your drip edge would be on whatever your system is, whether it be tile or shingle or whatnot. But you want to come out just a little bit more beyond that, so that when this particular roof has any kind of rainfall, the gutter actually catches it. Anyway, for what it's worth. All right, also you're going to notice that I have established a couple sets of clamps. Now I use regular sliding bar clamps along with some real spring-loaded clip clamps, so that I have some helpers here, because I don't have an extra person to hold the gutter for me while I'm trying to do the install. And that makes it very simple, because all I have to do is carry the gutter up, set it on the clamps, and it's in place until I install it. That's pretty handy. All right, we've settled on the approximate amount of slight overhang we want from our edge here. I know it's a little bit more than it needs to be for me, but I'm overly cautious, always have been. Gonna set this up right at the edge, and then I know that I'll be 1/4 inch down from that edge when I get to the other end. So now we just install our screw, and hopefully call this good. Now they do have very specific screws for this, and you can definitely use them. I'm using deck screws because they last forever. It's just that easy. All right, now we just got to go down the run and install more. down to the end and make sure we have our 1/4 inch slope. All right, now we have to make sure we have our slope, remember? So you can pre-mark this line using a chalk line if you want to. You can mark it ahead of time. You can do whatever you want. For me, it's just a matter of getting approximately where I need to be and eyeball it. And it looks like we should be good as far as the slope goes, so I'm gonna give that the go right now. Should be real close to our 1/4 inch. So I got one last bracket to tack in just to pull up level, and then we should be good.
A quick note, you may have to play around with this for just a minute, loosening some screws, sliding things around just to get these two pieces to join. It's worth all the extra effort, especially if you get a nice clean seam that's easy to seal with some silicone. And there's nothing more satisfying than that snap at the end when everything comes together.
And we're good. Yeah. Okay, so now we've reached the part where we have to fill in the missing end gap, right? We've got to then prep the end gap for where I'm going to put the downspout. I've already mounted the downspout to the pipe, as you can see here, and I have to measure the remaining space for the gutter, which is 50 7/8 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that measurement, which has already actually been done, 50 7/8 inches, and I used the side of the downspout to actually keep the line straight using my Sharpie marker. Now you can cut this with a hacksaw. You can cut it with a hacksaw, you can cut it with a chop saw, any kind of a hand saw that's capable of cutting this vinyl. It really doesn't matter as long as you get a nice clean cut, and you can obviously take some sandpaper to it to get rid of the burrs if you feel like that's necessary. You'll find that it probably isn't if you get a nice clean cut on there, especially with a hacksaw or a chop saw, also known as a miter saw. And you'll find that once that's done, it'll fill in that gap nicely. You will mount it up there, which we'll do, of course, and then we'll try to figure out how our downspout's going to align before we screw that in place. So let's get to cutting. Okay, so real quick, we have to actually go ahead and secure the end cap on this side that we've cut, and we'll flip it around. We'll install the joint that will eventually go up and get on the roof. Once again, we want to drive these screws in through the top to secure this. And again, this just makes it more secure. Puts us in a nice position for later. When we silicone everything together, we don't have to worry about if it's nice and tight. I feel like that kind of hit the right spot. Try that again. There we go. All right. That's not coming off. So we've put our piece up temporarily. We've got a pretty good line down the gutter. As we look down there, looks pretty good. So the next step is to mount the downspout. You can see our cut was really good right up there against the edge of the tile, the roof tile. Now, we want to align our downspout with our wall. then we're going to want to mark that. Put some set screws in the top of the downspout tube, like right here and right there. Maybe even on the other side as well, once we know for sure that's our proper alignment. It probably could be fudged a little bit more this direction, to be honest with you. Then we're going to use the two pre-made mounting holes on the bracket for the downspout to apply our screws and then slide it into place. Kind of excited about that, but I'm also going to add a hanger on that end just to make sure everything is sitting properly. And once again, if you really are doing this gutter project yourself, especially if you're doing it alone, marking a chalk line wouldn't be a bad idea. If you haven't done a lot of these before, you don't feel comfortable in measuring a 1/4 inch at every 10 foot, you can do the whole run, mark it with a chalk line, and then set that as the top of your gutter and just screw everything in that way. Another method that you can use is to put all of this together on the ground. Obviously, I think I've mentioned that before during the video. Put it all together on the ground, screw it all together, get it lined up except for your downspout. Get your downspout in place, and then be prepared to use a doorknob cutter to get the center of your downspout, which means you'll have to drill a small pilot hole from below so that you know where to stick your doorknob hole. And then you can cut out from there with a utility knife. It's just vinyl. It's not like it's difficult to cut through. So, well, there's that. Let's get on it. Got a lot to get done. And like I said, you don't have to have one of these doorknob cutters or circular blades for your drill. You don't. You can actually use a utility knife to do this particular operation. Which I'm sure would come in handy, you know, if you just had a utility knife. Again, I'm doing it this way because I have one of these. And there we have it.
Now, this part of the project is pretty bespoke. It's not the same for everybody based on where you're mounting your downspout, the angle of your fascia, etc., etc. So it's going to be very specific to your property, so play with it. It's kind of adult Legos. Enjoy that. It's going to take you probably 5 or 10 minutes to figure out exactly what pieces and parts you need, which is a good reason to go to the hardware store with an open mind when it comes to buying all these elbows and gadgets. Remember to plan your downspout in a location where you're going to have access to quality drainage. That's the whole point of doing this in the first place. Unless you're going to install a rain barrel like I plan to later, this is very important right from the get-go, especially where the landing is for your diverter. So plan ahead of time and you will save yourself a lot of hassle.
Okay, now we're at the part of the plan where we have to align this, at least during this installation, make it, you know, somewhat level so that it's attractive in a particular aesthetic, whatever that happens to be for you. I've used a piece of scrap here to kind of help line everything up, where I'm going to mark these brackets. These brackets are just clip-ons that the vinyl snaps right into. A little hole in the back. And then they just go right here, and we want to just go all the way to the ground so that we get pretty decent installation. Once we get this all lined up, we're going to measure from where that little gizmo is and kind of go from there. The goal again being level and square and plumb to the ground for proper drainage. Let's get to that. So now I'm going to use this piece of scrap pipe. Line it up with the edge where I want it to be. Use a level to get it level. Right there. And then I'm going to mark a hole in the center at the top and bottom of this scrap piece. That's going to be where I'm going to drill for my bracket. Right there in the center of the pipe. Should be good. Gonna drill this masonry bit into the stucco where I want it to go. All right. Do that again. Right here. Excellent. Since I'm mounting this right on the corner or on the edge of this wall, there was a decent chance I would hit a 2x4 or 2x6, depending upon the framing. And I did, which makes this a lot easier, especially for mounting these brackets. And I'm not, again, using the zinc screws that they sell at the hardware store. I'm using these wonderfully waterproof deck screws. There we go. That should go here. And there we go. Let's see if this works. It does. Magical. Now we measure our downspout tube where our scrap is now and figure out just how far down we're going to go with this. So. Looks like 72 inches. Let's go to work. Okay, so we've got our mounts installed. We have our drain pipe downspout extension cut. We're gonna fit it in these brackets. So, and then we're gonna tie it in to the top and reset a set screw in there and call it done. This is temporary for me. That's why this bracket is mounted so high. Normally this would be down a little bit lower and you'd add a third one, but I'm going to be installing a rain barrel system for catchment. I'm going to catch water and water garden plants with it. So this system isn't complete quite yet, and that'll be in a future video. Let's get these things attached here so we can move on. Be a little taller. Got a ladder. There we go. Set a screw there. There we go. everything's locked in place. And now it's time for the water test. And that's it. Seems to be working. Seems to be making me quite happy. Not perfect, but it's gonna work. So if you have any suggestions for future projects, please let me know in the description below, and we will definitely try to conquer them. Next up, I think we're gonna do some drywall repair, or maybe even a raised bed planter box. Thanks for watching. Let's build it.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Cultured Builds. Let's build it.